everyone, it's Jennifer Hogland here with Gooseberry Gardens, and today we are going to talk about potting up our little baby indoor seedlings. That's garden speak for putting them in bigger pots. Okay, so today we're going to go from these little tiny containers into 4-inch pots. All right, so in our last video we talked about seeding these plants to get them going for the year indoors. We're talking indoor gardening here. These are peppers here. We put seeds in seed starting mix, put them in these little containers, put them on a heat mat and with a cover on, waited for them to germinate. And once we saw those little green sprouts poking through the soil, we took our covers off, we turned our heat mats off, and we turned our lights on, and we added a fan so that our plants could be nice and big and strong. We're going to talk about a quick couple things to watch for as they are growing, and then we'll get on to potting these guys up. So I mentioned that we used a fan, and one of the biggest reasons for using a fan is to make these nice, strong stems, but also to prevent something called damping off. Now, damping off is a quite common fungal disease that can happen in indoor seed starting, and all it is a fungus that infects the stem of our little seedlings right at soil level. It's the fungus is carried in soil, and the best way to avoid that damping off, which can kill our poor little seedlings, is number one, to use a fan to keep the very top of that soil relatively dry. Okay, if we don't have moisture there, fungus will not grow. All right, the other thing we can do is make sure that we turn off our heat mats and take off our covers as soon as these guys germinate. Both of those things will increase the humidity around our plants, okay, and promote fungal disease. The last thing that we can do is make sure that we water our plants from the bottom. Okay, when we do that, we get water to the very bottom where our roots are, which is where it's needed. And also it will keep the top of the soil relatively dry. Again, drier soil top, better fungal disease resistance. Okay, so that's damping off. The other thing that we want to watch for when our plants are growing is any extra seeds. So where are we here? This guy here, these were some older tomato seeds, so I planted more than one seed in each of these little holes here. And that means that I had a couple that had more than one sprout in each hole. So all we do is we use our pointy nose scissors, okay, and we cut off the shoots that we do not want right at soil level. And this is tough, I know, having to kill some of our plants, but it needs to be done because we don't want these too densely planted. All right, they need airflow so that they don't are prone to fungal disease. Again, lots of airflow, and also we want to make sure that there's enough room for this one plant's roots to grow well. Okay, so thinning, all we need is pointy nose scissors, and thinning is done. All right, now the other thing we need to talk about is seed leaves. These are pepper plants here, all right, and they're just beginning to form their second set of true leaves. Now, all plants have seed leaves and true leaves. Now, the seed leaves are the very first leaves that appear, and there are two different kinds of seed leaves. They're called cotyledons, the seed leaves, and in monocots, there's one seed leaf, and in dicots, there are two seed leaves. So most of our plants that we're going to be growing are dicots. They have two seed leaves. Grasses and grains such as corn have only the one, and they're called monocots. All right, so this guy right here is a pepper plant, and these are the seed leaves. Now keep in mind, seed leaves can look nothing like the regular true leaves, okay? They often look completely different, and they are made to fall off, okay? So they will turn yellow, as this pepper plant's seed leaves are doing right now. They will turn yellow and brown and fall off, and that is completely normal. It is fine. Your plant is doing fabulously well still. All good. Seed leaves are meant to fall off, okay? True leaves, not so much. Now, we want to transplant or pot up these seedlings once we have one full set of true leaves and once the second set of true leaves are beginning to form. Okay, that's about the time that these guys need some extra nutrition. That means they need some new soil, and it means they need a little bit more root room. Okay, the other way to tell when our seedlings need to be potted up is if our roots or their roots are coming through the bottom. So these are baby cabbages, okay, and you'll notice there's a little bit of roots starting to come out the bottom of these pots. Okay, that's a good sign that they also need to be potted up into larger containers. All right. As I mentioned, we pot them up so that they have more room for their roots to grow. Also so that they can get a burst of nutrition. When we plant our seeds, all the nutrition that they need to germinate is within that seed. So they don't need a lot from the soil. That's why we use seed starting mix when we plant our seeds. But once they've started growing and getting true leaves, their nutrition needs go up, okay? They need some nutrition from the soil that they're in. And that's why when we pot up, we use potting soil instead of seed starting mix. A lot more nutrition in potting soil, okay? Don't worry so much about finding potting soil with fertilizer or anything like that. These are still very young baby plants, and a lot of the potting soils have too high a rate of fertilizer in them. If you are going to add fertilizer later on in life for these guys, I would still use a diluted fertilizer, at least 50% dilution from what's on the label. As I mentioned, they're still baby plants, okay? But not needed once we pot up, okay? So besides potting soil that we need, we also need containers. So I go from this small size, like 1.5 inch square, to a 4-inch pot. Okay, that's my next size up. Most of the plants that go into these 4-inch pot will go directly into the garden from this size. There are a few things such as tomatoes that will get potted up from this 4-inch into an 8-inch pot before they go out into the garden. They can't go out into the garden for quite a bit longer than many of the other plants. They need quite warm weather. They're sensitive. So they stay inside for quite a bit longer and therefore usually need to go from the 4-inch pot into at least one size bigger before they go out into the garden. So we have pots, we have potting soil, water, obviously, and the other thing they need is tags. So you'll notice in here, I use popsicle sticks, craft sticks you can get at any craft store, really cheap. Plus they biodegrade, so when I'm done using them at the end of the year, they can go straight into my compost bin. For my indoor plants here, I cut them in half and use a half one. For outside in the garden, I use a full stick. And then I just use an oil-based Sharpie marker to write on them. This will not smudge when these sticks get wet, which they will do. Okay, so that's all you need in terms of supplies. Let's look at exactly how to do this. All right, so here we have our seedlings. Here I have my 4-inch pot. All I've done is dunk this into my big potting soil bag or container and wiped off the top. Okay, I haven't packed this down at all. Now this is my little trick that I like to use. I've taken one of these cells and I've just cut them into individual squares. And what I do is I use this to go down and press into my container. And it's going to make a hole exactly the size of this guy. All right, so I have a perfectly sized hole in there that this is going to go into. I just use a regular salad fork here. Okay, and loosen up the sides of this a little bit. Stick your fork down the side. Okay, squeeze and lift. All right, so see we have roots coming out here. If I were to pull this out and I saw roots going around the entire outside, that's a very good sign that it's time to pot up. These aren't at that point yet, but this guy does have the second set of true leaves beginning to grow, so it is definitely time for him to get potted up. Okay, he's gonna go exactly right in our perfect hole that we have there. And all we're gonna do is gently tap this guy down, tamp the soil around him. All right, we're gonna give him a little bit of a water. Okay, and we're gonna stick in a label, and we're done. Pepper plant done. We have transferred this guy as quickly as possible, which is important. We do not want those roots drying out at all. That's how we get transplant shock. So the faster we can get this done and the less time those roots are exposed to air, the less chance of transplant shock. Okay, very important. Transplant shock is shown when the leaves get all droopy after they've been transplanted. Okay, most times plants will recover. It's just a little stressful for them. So the more that we can do to reduce transplant shock, the better. So that means quick transplanting. It means water as soon as we've transplanted, okay, and disturbing our roots the least amount as possible, okay? So this guy's done. We're gonna do one more here. We're gonna do a tomato plant. So potting soil in here. Once again, I have not packed this down at all. I have some tomatoes right here. Tomatoes are a little special, okay? The special thing about tomatoes is they can get planted really deep. You notice with our pepper plant, the top of the soil in the original container is the exact same top of the soil in terms of height in our new container, okay? We need to make sure that the stem is not planted any deeper than it originally was, okay? Exactly the same height. Tomatoes are different in that we can plant them deeper because the stem of tomatoes will actually grow roots from it. So when we plant this stem all the way up to here, okay, roots will form on any part of the stem that's under the soil. That's a good thing. Larger root system, healthier plant. Okay, so the more roots we can get on it, the better. Okay, also it'll help if we have some tomato seedlings that are a little bit leggy or a little bit tall. These guys aren't bad here, they got nice thick stems. But if we do have leggy ones, we just plant them a little bit deeper and they will be absolutely fine. So I'm gonna use this guy to plant here and I'm gonna try and go just a little bit deeper as well because we're gonna plant this guy deeper, right? Okay. This guy out of the way so you can see, squeeze, a little bit of squeeze to loosen it up. Take my salad fork, okay, lift it up and out, and directly into our pre-made hole. Okay, I'm gonna give it a little press down. Okay, moving the soil in and around to get it deeper. Now you can plant this all the way up to your seed leaves if you want to. You don't have to plant it super deep, but you definitely can. Like I said, good healthy root system. Okay, pack that down. Give them a water. And give him a label so we know what he is. And that's it. All potted up and ready to go. All right, so we've got some tomatoes and some peppers potted up. I have a lot more tomatoes and peppers and cabbages ready to go that I need to pot up as well. Obviously, this container is much bigger than one of these little ones. So, room problem. I know I have a limited amount of grow lights and grow shelf space, so I'm pretty sure the majority of you do as well. So what I do is I bring out some extra foldable tables and put them up alongside my south-facing windows. And a lot of these guys go along those tables. Not ideal. If I had unlimited money and grow lights and shelving space, I would definitely have these under grow lights until they go out into the garden. But we work with what we have. These guys, when I run out of room on my grow light shelves, will go on south-facing window tables, okay? And they will stay there until either my family gets completely tired and sick of all the room being taken over by plants, or until they go out into the garden. All right, that's it for today. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to comment below. If you have any further details that you need, go on to www.gooseberrygardens.ca. We have a full article on there on starting seeds indoors and potting up our plants to larger containers, and a whole article on transferring these transplants out in the garden when it's time. All right, thank you for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Yummy gardening!